Yeah, bud.
Hey Internet, this is Eric. You may know me from my Bollywood project, Doletown Road. Today, we're going to learn how to write a drum chart for New Horizons by Justin Gray. This is a self-described Indo-Jazz chart, so here are a few things to keep in mind. Generally speaking, I'm going to rely on common traits within a genre to make presumptions about the form or how it might sound. For example, a pop song will probably have a hook. A jazz song will probably have a solo. But this song, with its custom-built lead instrument, is going to be slightly outside the bounds of general convention. This is the kind of chart that is going to require a little bit of extra detail. Don't take anything for granted and offer examples or descriptions liberally to help describe the sound that you need. When I played this song, there were 2 drum kits on stage, and I shared drumming duty with my buddy K.S. Howlett. We coordinated duties throughout to ensure that at all points in time we had a decoration drum and a timekeeper drum. If you're working with 2 drummers, and if so, good for you, it generally sounds best if you make sure that they're not doing the same job. Treat them a little bit like a rhythm and lead guitar. If they're both doing the same thing, there should be a good reason for it. Because the recording has drum kit and tabla as opposed to 2 kits, we're going to write with that in mind. But we're going to add a few notes just in case we're in a situation where we end up being the decoration drum instead of the rhythm drum. Conventions are going to vary from community to community, but if I was playing with your band, this is roughly what I'd want to see. Now, for the first question when it comes to notating any drum chart. So my videos are generally divided into the following sections. These sections are loosely based off the information that I'm given when presented with a song for the first time.
Hey bro, we're gonna do this funk thing in 7. I'm gonna play the first chorus alone, then you could just hop in and follow along with me, but we play the bridge twice as the outro. Also, our other drummer always rides on the floor tom in verse 2, and the chorus has some tom shots like ba-dum bam bam, ba-dum bam bam, right there at the end. That's about it. Also, our bassist is presently drunk, so if you could just play like a big fill into the chorus to remind him that it's coming up, that'd be great.
But as previously mentioned, this piece is unconventional. Other than fusion, world music, or some other blanket term, I can't really define what it is in a single word. Having said that, it does feel like a backbeat-based rhythm in 4, so that's what we're going to latch onto for now. I'm going to allow space for drummer 2 nice and early, and really try to drive home the point that there are 2 drummers and you're drum 1. I'd prefer to add my title and artist at the end as a sort of cherry on the cake moment, but in this case I'm going to slip these in nice and early so that I can add this drum 1 of 2 detail here and make sure that I don't forget it later. I'd say this music most closely resembles jazz form, with a 32-bar head and chord changes that repeat throughout. I'm going to go ahead and write that out to keep the form as clear as possible. I'm adding in a lot of rehearsal marks that I would generally not write because I'm basing this off of a chart that is not my own. When I was first given this song, I received a bass chart instead of a drum chart. Now that's not at all uncommon, and the bass and drums are usually rhythmically intertwined. Many composers prefer this approach as drums work with a slightly different rule set than most other instruments, and composers don't always have a good resource to help them when it comes to notating drum charts. If your drummer is familiar with reading notation, they should be able to get a decent idea of what to play by reading the bass chart. However, bass charts contain a lot of information that we don't necessarily need and lack information that I would call crucial. So I'm going to be writing my own drum chart for this, but keeping things like rehearsal marks to make sure that the chart is still compatible with the original charts. Okay, a lot of specifics here because when I see backbeat, I picture this or this. I'm going to write out exactly what's on the recording to really define the sound that I'm going for. This is a tricky one to notate as some of the tabla hits are going to be entering the bass drum range, and it's difficult to pick them apart. So we're going to work with the biggest, most obvious stuff, and then we can work backwards from there. I'm going to define this notation over top of the note in plain English to make sure that it is quickly and easily understood. We also have a situation where both of our voices have a rest in the same location. In this case, we're simply going to delete one and center the other. As a drummer, I generally don't like seeing notes that are much bigger than a quarter note length. So I'm going to make an exception for this as these 2 rests side by side look incredibly confusing. Oops, going to write halftime feel instead of halftime and define what I mean here. There's a few parts of this melody that I think are definitely worth catching on to, so I'm going to write them over top of the slash notation here. Now, this type of notation is actually rare to see outside of big band charts, but it is fantastic information to have. going to allow your drummer to understand the rhythm of the music much better and may give them ideas on how to embellish or decorate melodies in a way that's going to allow even a sight-reading drummer to sound like they've been playing this song since birth. Furthermore, hundreds of bars of slashes or repeat signs can sometimes feel like trying to count squares on a screen door. Having your melody rhythmically notated here helps give drummers visual cues and will make your charts far easier to read. If your top line looks cluttered, you can simplify rhythms to highlight the attack of the melody notes, but be aware that even though all drummers really need is the attack of the note, the length of the note is also going to affect their phrasing. So here at I want the kick drum to be played alongside the bass line. Might be a good idea to call it the kick as opposed to the bass so as not to get confused between the bass drum and the bass guitar. So we're going to move the rhythmic notation along to the bottom side. This section at 112 is just cruel for any drummer without a double pedal, so in this instance, it might be best to just cut out the non-essential and highlight the parts that you want hit. Going to add a few dynamic markings here as well to make sure the drummer knows this is not going to be a big bombastic explosive part. It is okay to have your hi-hat, snare, and kick all sharing a stem, but as a rule of thumb, I group my drum parts as static versus non-static. What this generally means is that my snare and kick are going to share a stem, and my cymbals will share their own as well. Drummers are naturally going to add fills as needed. Do not write fills unless you're absolutely sure that you need them there, and don't notate your fills unless you're absolutely sure that you need that sound. It is akin to writing out a specific solo or walking bass line. Assume that your drummer can fill better than you can. This song's got a nice fill into the first head and one move into the last I section, but nothing really essential other than that. Having said that, I'm going to be fully expecting my drummer to interpret these final shots and many of the section shots as fills. It is rare that a drummer is going to play these straight without any kind of embellishment, so expect that and consider them to be little mini fill areas unless you need them absolutely tight, in which case you may want to write something along the lines of in unison. We're going to want to format this one carefully. There's a lot of little things that we want to make sure are obvious. We're going to want to keep F on the same page as the rest of the section. Very important. Spreading this information over 2 pages is doing no one any favors, especially with the modern practice of having sheet music on an iPad. You don't want to have to switch between the 2 pages like that. I am always re-listening during my notation as well, and I'm rethinking my language here. Not only because it's cluttering up my page, but also because if it's too long for the page, it's probably going to be too long to read. If something is too long, simplify. If it's too long, simplify. Simplify. Now let's trim some fat, make it look nice, add a title and artist, and I think that this is ready for us to have a read. We now have a nice legible drum chart that I'd be proud to showcase as my third grade ensemble project. I want to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. It is a personal favor to me. You could write a nice professional drum chart instead of a nice professional bass chart. Once again, please show some love to the artist who was kind enough to let me use his music. This is Justin Gray's New Horizons off of his album of the same name. So have fun, practice hard, don't explode, and I will see you all next time.